Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
Welcome to This Week at Work, the only show to pack workplace news, practical HR solutions, and timely insights into every 30-minute episode. It's Thursday, October 31st, episode 302. Today, Phil and Burt dive into workplace laws up for a vote in key markets. From Florida and Indiana to Missouri and Illinois, we're breaking down what's on the ballot and what it means for HR professionals. So stay tuned to find out which proposed workplace regulations are tricks and which one might just be a treat. This show is brought to you by AIM Employers Association, live every Thursday morning, so you can regularly connect with their experts and get your legal questions addressed by Ogletree Deacons. And now, it's time for This Week at Work.
All right, Bert, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Phil. It's get a little Halloween, some spooks in the electronic equipment today for everybody, but we're here, we're rolling.
You know, that's what happens after you have a drought for as long as we've had it here in the Midwest, and we get a little bit of a rain shower, and then everything goes a little wonky. But we do have a good lineup for everyone today. We got Lawyer on the Clock. We got a poll question for you. We got Phil Burt's Forum, and we're going to cover some of the election ballot issues that are going on across the states of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Florida that may have employment implications. So stay tuned. We're going to cover all those. Bert, let's jump right in because there is a lot to go on. I'm going to cover the poll question today. And the first and only poll question we have you decided on your votes? Do you know how you're going to vote? We got some election choices for you there. I do believe most people's already decided. I think most people knew where they were voting months ago, Bert. I don't know about you. But it just seems like a way to spend a lot of money and get everyone all fired up.
It would be amazing to see if we could figure out a way to spend all of the money that's spent on campaigns around the country and do something more productive with it. But hey,
I agree with that. Yeah.
Billions are spent.
It is absolutely crazy, the amount of money. Anyhow, we're almost there. It's almost over. Have you voted yet, Bert?
I have not voted yet, but I'll tell you, it's amazing the number of people I've spoken to who have already voted this year.
Yeah. I'm going to try and get in early. I'm expecting long lines. It was long last time, and if there's a way to get in early and not wait in a long line, I'm going to take advantage of that. But let's get things started here today. Are you ready for Lawyer on the Clock?
I'm ready.
All right, Bert. Nick, pull that lever.
All right, it's time to look into what's trending in employment law. Lawyer, you're on the clock.
All right, so the first one I want to talk about, Phil, we've kind of been following things here with this Muldrow versus the City of St. Louis case where the U.S. Supreme Court expanded what constitutes an adverse employment action under the anti-discrimination laws. And just kind of following on to that, yesterday, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals reopened a Black social workers lawsuit. In that case, he alleged that he received an unfavorable performance review because he had asked for a new stand-up desk to work remotely in his wheelchair. So he was working remotely. He's in a wheelchair. He made a request for a stand-up desk so that he could more easily fit his wheelchair underneath that. The appeals court said that on remand, the court needs to consider whether the employee did enough to show that he faced an adverse employment action in light of the Supreme Court's ruling this past April in that Muldrow case. So interesting to see how this starts to play out. In November 2020, the plaintiff in the case had asked the employer to provide a standing desk so he could work remotely in his wheelchair. That request was denied, and the employer said that when he made the request that the desk was really nothing more than a convenience or a choice. The employee then complained to the ADA coordinator supervisor. And then after that, the employee who made the request was also, he complained that a female colleague had accused him of conducting an onboarding training in his native language of Somali. and the managers dismissed the accusation as false, but then the same coworker made another complaint about him again in March of 2021. During the March of 2021 performance review, the supervisor told the employee that he needed to improve his communication skills. He was also subjected to a disciplinary investigation in which it was recommended that he receive coaching. And so the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals said that they need to consider under Muldrow whether that performance review and the coaching are adverse employment actions under Title VII. My hunch is that they're going to ultimately conclude that these were not adverse employment actions, but I don't know all of the facts of the case. But again, we're just kind of following the Muldrow case here.
I just feel like we're out of control, Bert. I know it's Halloween, and I mean, there's all kinds of things going on here, but I mean, it feels like we're way out of control with all these. I mean, where's the reasonableness in the way that people behave on both sides here? Whatever might be taking place, I have no idea. But it seems like with some simple conversation and reasonableness, these things get resolved. But I'm sure there's something more going on beyond being reasonable here.
I have no doubt. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this one, see how it plays out on remand at the trial court level, the district court, and whether the district court concludes that these were adverse employment actions. I can promise you one thing, that no matter what the district court concludes, unless the case settles some way, somehow, it's going to be back on appeal to the Eighth Circuit, whatever this district court judge decides.
Well, stay tuned, and we will keep you up to date. We've been following this for a while now, so stay tuned, and lawyer Burt Garland here will keep you up to date. What else you got, Burt?
All right. We had a great program, Phil, yesterday that we did yesterday out at AIM on exempt versus non-exempt, and we talked about the top 10 mistakes that employers make in the wage and hour area. And one of those top 10 mistakes is not properly compensating employees for time that they spend donning and doffing protective gear or waiting in line for security screenings, etc.
And the activities prior to work or that are adjacent to your work responsibilities. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And on the flip side, time spent at the end of the day to wrap up before you clock out or before you can finish the work for the day. So just wanted to bring this to our viewers' attention. Amazon got hit with a proposed 10,000 member class action in New York federal court in the last couple of days. In that suit, they're alleging that that it took between 5 and 10 minutes to walk from the entry of the warehouse to the time clock. Pre-shift activities increased to 30 minutes per employee when the company implemented COVID-19 screenings. They also say that the company did not pay them for their security screenings that they were required to undergo before leaving the warehouse. And so this is going to be a large case up in New York. I'm not sure which way the court will go on this. And in fact, I can't comment one way or the other on it, but just beware that this lawsuit was filed seeking to represent more than 10,000 workers in what in essence is what we would classify as a donning and doffing case. The time spent in security screenings and then the time spent walking to their workstations after they were required to go clock in at a different location.
Yeah, well, that's going to be an interesting one to follow for sure. And I know you'll have to be careful and what you comment and say on that. But, you know, I think about jobs that I've had over the years and that travel time, basically once you're on company premise to your workstation after you've donned your equipment or gathered your gear or you clocked in, was always paid by the companies that I worked with. So I'll be curious to see how this one vets out. And that's going to, what you said, 10,000 workers?
10,000, and not only that.
Over how many years?
Yeah, I think over because it's under New York state law that the claims are being brought. I think that the statute of limitations goes back like 6 or 7 years. So it could be a huge
Oh
class.
my goodness. Yeah, you're talking possibly millions. Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, possibly millions here. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that as well. That's that one's really timely with yesterday's program, which by the way was fantastic. For anyone that missed that program, we do have it available we do have it available on demand. And you can reach out to your advisor here at AIM, or you may send us a note online there, fill out a form. We'll be able to help you get that program set up for you. But it was a fantastic program. I think you and Samuel did a wonderful job. The reviews were amazing.
Great.
Just amazing. You hit the mark, I think, on all fronts there.
Great. Well, I think we had about close to 40 people in attendance live and another 80 plus online for the program. So it was very well attended.
It was great. Yep. What else you have, Bert?
All right, this one will segue us nicely into our topic today. I just want to bring to people's attention that, we've talked a lot about the gig economy and how most states and even the federal government, depending on which party is in power, wants to try to convert gig economy workers into employees. And because if they're employees, they can do things like unionize, and then they're entitled to federal benefits and federal protections like health care under the Affordable Care Act, and then protections under Title VII, FMLA, etc. Well, the voters in Massachusetts are taking a different approach to this issue. And next week, they're going to decide whether Uber and Lyft drivers can form a union and collectively negotiate their pay and working conditions, even though they're still independent contractors. So just a very different approach. They're not even trying to convert them into employees. They're just trying to give them the legal right to unionize as independent contractors. And it's kind of a similar mechanism to the way bargaining might work in a workplace sector in Europe. And so
that's exactly what I was thinking of. Exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah.
They're trying that methodology up in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has more than 84,000 registered rideshare drivers. And both of those companies, Uber and Lyft, deem their drivers to be independent contractors instead of employees. And this would really shake up the landscape. And by the way, if it passes in Massachusetts and is able to withstand scrutiny in the court system, you might see this being tried in other states around the country.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, and I would assume where it's being tried, the leaning might be more favorable in that situation. But when you think about how that works as independent contractors, I mean, I could get my head around, maybe particularly because having lived and worked across seas in Europe and experiencing that, I can get my head around the possibility that that's got real legs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting because my first reaction to this was, as I read the headline, was how can they do this in Massachusetts? Because federal labor law, the National Labor Relations Act, preempts states' laws on unionization. But it's interesting because it preempts states' laws on unionization with respect to employees. It doesn't say anything. The federal law doesn't say anything about independent contractors, unionization of independent contractors. And so I don't necessarily believe that federal labor law would preempt this, but my hunch is that somebody will try to make that argument that this is not a proper effort under state law, but we'll see how it plays out.
Well, there's never a shortage of things for us to talk about and keep people informed on. And I can see our chat is already starting to fill up. So I want to keep things moving here, Bert, so we can get to some of these election ballot, I guess the election ballots that are out there for all of us to decide. I'm stumbling over my words here, for us to vote on, I guess, next week. Anyway, but if you have anything else, Bert, do you want to cover on Lawyer on the Clock?
I think we've exhausted it, Phil.
All right, I'm going to get myself gathered here. All right, just having some fun. Let's do this Phil Burt's Forum.
You've just entered Phil Burt's Forum, where we peel the onion back and take a lighter look at the workplace.
Nick put together some really clever things here, and I think it's just timely today being Halloween. And I know I've kind of peeked through the door here outside the studio, and our employees are already coming dressed in costumes. And there's several of them dressed as Burt Garland today. I'm not sure if that's in line with our policy or not, but nevertheless, let's take a look at the first one here.
I hesitate to ask, Phil, what does that look like exactly?
I'll take some pictures and send it to you. But one of them's in a 300 costume, and they got a mask of Burt Garland on. Anyway, let's take a look at this first one here. I'm going to cover this one, Burt. You can take the next one. It says, look, if they already know you're a clown, you don't have to dress up and confirm it. That's a good one.
Right.
I like that one.
All right, no, the next one, not quite as cool as the Headless Horseman, but equally as creepy. It does make it easier to pull the head out of a particular area if the head is detached from the body, though. That is creepy. That is creepy.
That is, yep. That's Nick right at work there. Oh, the worker sloth. This is a good one. You've heard of the worker bee, and would be a good costume to wear at work. But don't wear a worker sloth costume. Again, we already know if you're a worker sloth, you don't have to prove it. That's right in line with the clown.
Yep. Next one we have here. How about the killer IT worker? We already know that technology can be scary, like it is for all of us today on this Halloween. And regardless of how IT makes you feel, it's probably not a good idea to dress like what you see on the screen.
All right, the last and final one, and we do try to support our HR workers around the country with the program. This is a good one. Whatever you do, don't go as an HR worker. So for all of our friends out there who practice the profession of HR today, come to work as someone other than yourself, it sounds like, but that's a good one. Good job there, Nick. Happy to be able to cover those today on Halloween. But Burt, let's get to the meat of the program here and talk about what's on the ballot in the states of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Florida, because that's primarily where our offices are and most of our members reside. And there are things going on that we should talk about that are going to have an implication on the workplace.
Absolutely.
So let's start in the Sunshine State of Florida, Burt.
Yeah, so in the Sunshine State of Florida, they are now considering recreational marijuana use. Remember, we did that here in Missouri a couple of years ago.
We have started with Illinois, then Missouri. We have in Florida. I can tell you, in Indiana, they have no appetite for that in the legislature there. It's not on the ballot. They already do have in Florida medical use, right? That seems to be the trend. You go from medical to recreational is how most states have gone. But that is a big issue. So we may be on the road to Florida to do our indicia training program there.
That's exactly right. So people haven't had a chance to experience that training here in St. Louis. Let Phil know, and we can get that on the calendar again. Also for our folks in Illinois, you may be interested in that as well. And so under this legislation, it would legalize recreational marijuana for adults 21 older in Florida, allow possession of up to 3 ounces of marijuana, and authorize medical marijuana treatment centers and other licensed entities to cultivate, process, sell, and distribute marijuana products and accessories, and allow potential restrictions on smoking locations. So again, that indicia training will be very important down in Florida.
So, I was down in Florida during Hurricane Helene. And we got stuck there, and so I got a chance while the power was on to watch some television, and there was commercials for and against legalizing marijuana. And excuse me, my favorite commercial was the one it had the typical stereotype of a marijuana smoker. I'll let your imagination determine what that is. Was typical stereotype. And he was preparing his garden to grow his marijuana. And sitting next to him was your typical bureaucrat, and he's sitting in his lawn chair laughing and giggling, and they asked him, what's going on? And then basically he said, if you think we're going to let you grow your own, you're crazy. This bill doesn't let you grow your own. We're going to control all of it so we can control the taxes and revenues, this and that. And then the guy says, well, then I'm voting no. It was just this outrageous commercial. It was so funny in that sense, but just a little bit of humor as we go along with it.
On that point, the tax revenue projected to be generated by this bill in the state of Florida is over $4 billion in 2025.
And that, just a little fun fact is we spend about $3 billion on Halloween candy in America each year. So that in one state, in the tax revenue for marijuana, $4 billion, more than the entire country's Halloween spend in 1 month. So good stuff.
Crazy.
What else do we have, Bert?
All right, let's shift over. That's all that's pending in Florida that could affect the workplace. Let's shift over to Missouri. We have one that could have some pretty dramatic impact on the workplace here. Proposition A, and Proposition A would increase Missouri's minimum wage. Starting January 1, 2025, the minimum wage would be increased to $13.75 with yearly increases of $1.25 per year until it reaches $15 per hour by January 1, 2026. So $13.75 next year, $15 January 1, 2026. And after that, adjustments would be based on a cost of living increase. If the federal minimum wage ever exceeds the state rate, the higher federal rate would apply. The position also exempts public employers from certain minimum wage increases. So that's the first piece of this legislation. The second piece of this legislation is very similar to what Illinois has done in the past, and that is the legislation will allow Missouri's employers to or Missouri voters to decide whether employers must pay employees or provide employees earned paid sick time moving forward. And so, again, this piece of legislation, it deals with minimum wages, paid sick time, and paid sick time would accrue at a rate of 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. It would begin accruing for existing employees on May 1 of 2025 or the first day of employment for employees hired after that date. Employees with 15 or more employees may limit an employee's use of paid sick time to 56 hours per year. Employers with fewer than 15 employees may limit an employee's use of paid sick time to 40 hours per year. So also very similar to the Illinois law that went into effect, there is going to be a mechanism for front loading this time for basically allowing the employees a bank of leave at the beginning of their employment. There's also going to be an accrual method that employers can use. Also, the employers must allow employees under this proposed legislation to carry over at least 8 hours. Oh, something happened to my lighting. More.
Happy Halloween!
In the system here, Phil. So there's a carryover provision that allows employees to carry over at least 8 hours of unused paid sick time from year to year. I see in our chat here we have a question that if this passes, and do you believe we will still need to provide carryover or pay out at the end of the year? So again, the carryover is set at least 8 hours per year. But you do not need to pay that time out at the end of the year under the piece of legislation.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because, the sick time, it talks a little bit about it, but it seems to focus more on the minimum wage. And, for me personally, I mean, I'm stuck on this one, right? It's, I want people to make as much money as they can when they work. And I want to, have reasonable, manageable inflation over time. And those two things really create often contrast for each other. And doing all the compensation work we see, it's amazing the compression that has occurred in the last 4 years between the entry-level worker, their supervisor, their manager, and then up the line. And some people might like that. Some people may say, well, we should all, more of a socialistic view, and it should just be, more balanced. But there doesn't seem to be that reward process also for people to move into higher level positions of responsibilities without creating additional wage increases that are creating inflation challenges. And then you have, employers, and you and I chatted about this yesterday, that, some of these positions, I'll call them, they're not really intended to be career-oriented positions, or at least in the way that Phil Brandt thinks about it. Like if I work at McDonald's as, the French fry cook, or, I'm serving the drive-through, I don't see that as my career. I'm used to that being something that that you do while you're working part-time towards something else in your career. And some people choose to do it for a long time, and they do it for many, many years, but I see it more as a part-time type role. I have lots of flexibility. My schedule kind of comes and goes based upon, who else is available and what my availability is. And there's a lot of collaboration in that. And now to think you're going to have sick time paid with that, I don't know that that is going to help us manage inflation. Of course, I want people to be paid. I want people to be looked after when they're ill. But I'm not sure. There's a lot of mixed emotions about the impact of this. Not necessarily for that one worker who's going to get sick time because they were off today due to whatever the illness is. But the impact it has for restaurants, retail, locations that, really aren't intending to, they're trying to manage their cost constraints. I'm rambling here a little bit, but that's because I have so many mixed emotions in my head about it.
Yeah, it's a tough issue. This will probably hit the restaurant, retail, hospitality sector harder than any other sector, because those are hourly, typically lower paying jobs. And if you don't work, you don't get paid. If you don't work, you don't have sick time. You just simply don't get paid. You're generally allowed the time off unless you're like a no-call, no-show, or the attendance becomes a problem. You're constantly calling off. But a lot of employers in those sectors do not provide sick time. And so what this law would do is it would provide sick time. It also would increase the minimum wage. And so, you just have to balance trying to provide a good wage rate for those people in that sector, in those sectors, but also what that might do to prices and inflation. And then my biggest concern related to it is we're just going to continue to see automation and employers doing more with less. You'll see fewer people working at a retail store. We already know sometimes how hard it is to find people for, when you need assistance in one of those stores. And it's a tough issue all the way around.
It is. And I don't want my comments to be misunderstood that, I don't have compassion or empathy or even a fair perspective of the retail and or restaurant industry. I think I understand it very well, but we're talking about really changing the game and how benefits and pay is provided. And that's going to have implications way beyond the few industries that already are aren't doing these things, that will need to start doing these things if they pass. But, in the end, I want everyone to have a good set of benefits and a fair program. I think much of that depends on the industry you choose and the profession you work in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
All right, Bert, what else do we have?
That's what we have here in Missouri. Illinois, they're taking an interesting approach. They have some advisory questions on the ballot.
What does that mean? Advisory questions.
That's an interesting mechanism that they use over there that I think just passed fairly recently, that they can get the advice of their citizenry about things that the legislature might want to consider passing. And so they have 3 advisory questions on the ballot. The first is, should any candidate appearing on the Illinois ballot for federal, state, or local office be subject to civil penalties if the candidate interferes or attempts to interfere with an election worker's official duties? Think about the challenges to the last presidential election. And so just keep that one in mind. How about this one? Should the Illinois Constitution be amended to create an additional 3% tax on income greater than $1 million for the purpose of dedicating funds raised to property tax relief? And the last one, should all medically appropriate assisted reproductive treatments, including but not limited to in vitro fertilization, be covered by insurance plans? Now, again, these are not laws that are being passed. They're just advisory questions on whether the legislature should take up and consider passing these. Also in Illinois,
when did the governor ever worry about what everyone in the state wanted? I thought he only cared about what people in Chicago wanted.
I don't think it's the governor. I think it's special interest that's getting these on the ballot.
Okay, well said. That's a good point of differentiation.
Yep. And then there's a provision whether to include to amend their state Human Rights Act to cover discrimination caused by the use of artificial intelligence. And then lastly, our friends over in Indiana, there is nothing on the ballot this week for you all to consider as it relates to labor and employment issues.
Yeah, Indiana, you gotta love it. I mean, they just play it straight right down the middle. I like the way they approach the business there. Hey, let's talk about this the AI thing just for a second, real quick, Burt. Employers are required, part of what a yes vote would be is that employers would be required to notify employees if AI is being used in employment decisions such as hiring, promotions, discipline. Well, almost all technologies today are using some form of AI for assistance. And I find that one is going to just create a huge mess of, well, it was because of the way AI was programmed. And I can only imagine a court case that's got, programmers in there trying to describe the programming logic is or is not discriminatory in its logic. This one's going to be quite interesting to see what happens with AI.
I agree, and even though the Illinois is considering amending its Human Rights Act to cover discrimination caused by the use of AI, it's probably an unnecessary step.
I see it that way too. It's still discrimination, right?
Exactly.
The employer's still responsible.
That's exactly right. Just because it's AI doesn't mean that you all of a sudden can discriminate. And so under the federal laws,
wash my hands of it.
Yeah, we already have the EEOC taking on this issue as one of its primary issues. And they've already announced that AI cannot discriminate where an employer otherwise can't discriminate.
Yeah. All right, Burt, again, thanks for yesterday. That was a great program. And if anyone's interested in learning more about the Fair Labor Standards Act, it's a couple hours of great detail, nice, in-depth, clearly understood, great examples. So we'd be happy to help share that with you as well. Until then, we're going to be back here next week at 7:30 Central Time. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues, forward our invites, share the link, aimea.org/This Week at Work, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment. LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're everywhere you are. Don't forget you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.